He spent the entire night talking to her deceased body right after taking her life. 35-year-old Rakesh and his 32-year-old wife Gauri were living in Pune, India. They ended up relocating to Bangalore, India because of a new career opportunity that he got in this new city. Gauri was previously working but had to quit her job because of this new opportunity for Rakesh. They were filled with new dreams and ambitions, and it seemed like when they moved, they were living happily together, but things started to change. They were living on the first floor of an apartment in a very nice area, and for the most part, Rakesh would work from home on his laptop. Gauri was on the hunt for a new job. She sent her resume to many places, but never got a call back. Because of this, she would blame him for being self-centered and only focusing on his career and not hers. Rakesh tried to console her daily and tell her that eventually she would find a good job and not to rush into anything, but she didn't want to hear it from him. Over time, Gauri started to become very angry and grew to resent her husband for only thinking about himself, and all of this would end in a tragic outcome. On March 26th of this year, the couple were sitting down for dinner, and as they were eating, Gauri started to complain once again that the reason why she wasn't able to find a job was because of Rakesh. This time, Rakesh was tired of Gauri's nagging and argued back with her. This infuriated Gauri so much that she slapped him across the face. But she didn't stop there. She then went into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and threw it at him. Rakesh only received a minor cut, but because of this, he became so mad that he grabbed that same knife and stabbed her 3 times. Gauri collapsed on the ground, and eventually she stopped breathing. Once Rakesh's anger subsided, he realized what he had just did, so he moved her body to the side and started cleaning the floor from blood. Rakesh then sat next to her lifeless body, talking to her throughout the whole night, saying things like, "Look what you made me do, and I didn't mean to kill you." The next morning around 10 a.m., Rakesh had emptied a luggage bag and put Gauri's body inside of it and placed it in the bathroom. Around 12:30 p.m., Rakesh had packed a bag for himself to go to Pune, and he left Gauri's body behind. Once Rakesh arrived to Pune, he ended up calling the apartment complex saying that his wife wanted to take her life and if they could go check on her. However, moments later, he ended up confessing to taking her life. That person then contacted police, and once police arrived, they broke into the apartment, and that's when they found Gauri's body inside of that bathroom. The Bangalore police ended up contacting the Pune police, and before they could even go find him, he had already surrendered himself. When Rakesh was going to the police station, he told them that he actually tried to take his own life because he took the life of his wife. Police ended up taking him to a nearby hospital, and during his confession, he stated that Gauri would mock his relationship with his father and also make fun of his mother and sister. He also told police that she would take out her frustration on him, and he had enough of it. Rakesh was arrested and is currently in custody.
This is why people believe that 5-year-old Summer Wells' family is responsible for her disappearance. If you're not already familiar with this case, everything you need to know is linked in part 1 below. And firstly, I think it's important to say that the investigators on this case have said that Summer's family has been nothing but cooperative and that her mother, father, and grandmother have all passed a polygraph test. I know some people think that polygraph tests are junk science, so make up your own mind on that. The thing that initially strikes me about being odd about Summer Wells' parents is all in this interview that they did right after she disappeared. Her parents just kept using past tense when talking about Summer, and in all my years of looking in true crime, that's never a good sign. They said sentences like "Summer was" and "Summer used to" and "Summer did." Just not a good look. Then in the same interview, her mother and father give very different explanations on why Summer's head was shaved shortly before she disappeared. This is a detail a lot of people have issues with in this case. I mean, why would you shave your 5-year-old daughter's head? In the interview, Summer's mom says that Summer wanted to shave her head, that she was this big tomboy, and that her head was shaved and her brothers' heads were shaved, and Summer just wanted to look more like her mom and her older brothers. But then literally 2 minutes later in the same interview, her father says that Summer's hair was getting too out of control and that's why they had to shave it, and that her mother shaved her head because Summer felt bad about her head being shaved to make her feel better. So which is it? And then 2 weeks after Summer disappeared, her 3 older brothers were removed from the home by CPS. And then shortly before Summer's disappearance, Summer's mom filed DV charges against Summer's dad and tried to get a protection order against him, both things that she later dropped. So a lot of people think that this clearly isn't a safe household for children. Maybe something happened to Summer, maybe it was an accident, and her scent that the dogs tracked leaving her home was actually her family carrying out her body. And then there's also a theory that Summer's mom traded her for either illegal substances or money. If you remember 15-year-old Hunter from part 1, well, I guess after Summer disappeared, he was kind of suspicious of Candace, so he went through Summer's mom's phone, and I guess the day that Summer disappeared, she texted her dealer, "It's done." Now, I have no proof if this text is real, but after Hunter told the investigators this, they told him to cut off all contact with Summer's family. Investigators that were on the scene that day said that there was no evidence of an abduction, but they also said there was no evidence of foul play either. And with no updates or leads, this case has unfortunately gone cold. But in 2021, investigators did ask the public to look out for a red Toyota truck with a full bed ladder and white buckets in the bed. They did say, though, that they believe this to be a witness and not the vehicle of a suspect. Like I always do, I will add an age progression photo of what Summer Wells might look like now. I really don't know what to make of this case, so I really hope you guys have some strong opinions in the comments that kind of help me make up my own mind. I do get really weird vibes from her parents though, but yeah, please let me know what you guys think in the comments.
The South Yorkshire Police are officially investigating the death of U.S. ice hockey player Adam Johnson, who horrifically died during a game on Saturday. Adam was an extremely talented hockey player who recently began playing for the Nottingham Panthers for the 2023-2024 season. On Saturday, the Panthers were playing against the Sheffield Steelers at the Utilita Arena in England. During the second period, Adam suffered a serious neck injury after colliding with Matt Petgrave, a Steelers player. Everyone in the arena witnessed the incident, and it was also caught on video, which I do not recommend watching out of respect for Adam's family. It's incredibly graphic, and I wish that I didn't see it. Adam briefly stood up, bleeding profusely out of his neck. He did manage to skate off the ice with the help of a teammate, but he ultimately collapsed again. His teammates tried to help him, but he was rushed to the hospital where doctors tried to get him through surgery, but they couldn't stop the bleeding and he ultimately died. The arena was immediately evacuated and the game was suspended after Adam was rushed to the hospital. The police have recently stated that although its officers have now left the scene, the investigation remains ongoing, and it will take time due to the complex nature of this tragic incident. They said that with any unexpected or sudden deaths, it's standard practice to fully investigate the circumstances and report their findings to the coroner. The English Ice Hockey Association has since stated that starting December 31st, neck guards will become mandatory for player safety. In the meantime, they are strongly recommended, but they do understand that there will likely be some anticipated supply issues. There's been a major uproar on social media where many believe that Matt's kick was intentional, while many others, including a few of Adam's teammates, think that this was a horrific freak accident and they don't blame Matt for the incident. According to an international sports lawyer, from a theoretical standpoint, Matt could be prosecuted, but from a practical standpoint, it's not super likely, as officials would have to find sufficient evidence that the kick was intentional and that this was more than just a freak accident. But overall, Adam's family just wants this to be investigated properly. After all, we have seen this happen time and time again. I've attached a GoFundMe in my bio that's organized by the Nottingham Panthers Ice Hockey Club. All of the donations will go to supporting local charitable activities in Hibbing, Minnesota, which was Adam's hometown. Rest in peace, Adam Johnson.
A 14-year-old carried an AR-15 into his high school inside his backpack, and within minutes, 4 innocent people were dead. His name was Colt Gray. Before the shooting, Colt was an loud kid that everyone was afraid of. Most people actually describe him as quiet, polite, and withdrawn. But behind that silence was a childhood filled with instability. His mother struggled with a meth addiction before eventually leaving. His family constantly bounced from place to place, and he even missed an entire year of school because of the chaos at home. He was isolated, bullied, struggled with anxiety, and slowly disappeared into online communities where he became obsessed with infamous mass shooters. And over time, that obsession turned into planning. For nearly 2 years, Cole mapped out the attack. He wrote handwritten diagrams of his classrooms, tactical plans, and even had a shrine dedicated to the Parkland school shooter. But what makes it even harder to understand is that the warning signs had been there all along. In May of 2023, local deputies teachers visited Colt and his father Colin after online threads surfaced about a possible school shooting. Although they couldn't prove that Colt made the post, his father knew exactly why law enforcement had showed up at their doorstep. Just months later, he bought his 14-year-old son an AR-15 for Christmas. Then came September 4th, 2024. Colt walked into Appalachian High School with the rifle hidden inside his backpack. Earlier that morning, one of his teachers noticed that his backpack seemed unusually heavy and emailed school staff with concerns. Around that same time, Colt asked questions about how the school would respond to an active shooter. His mother even called the school, saying there was an extreme emergency and begged them to check up on her son. Staff began searching for him, but they tragically mistook another student for Colt. While they were looking for the wrong student, Colt was hiding in the bathroom with a rifle. He eventually left the bathroom, entered a nearby classroom, and opened fire. 4 innocent people were murdered. 2 of them were 14-year-old students, and the other 2 were beloved math teachers. 9 other people were wounded as students barricaded doors, hid under desks, and desperately waited for the gunfire to stop. Within minutes, the school's resource officers confronted Colt in the hallway. He immediately dropped to the ground, surrendered, and was taken into custody. In July of 2026, Colt pleaded guilty to all 55 charges and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 20 years. Because he was only 14 when the murders happened, he couldn't legally get the death penalty. His father, Colin Gray, was also held accountable. Because why would you give a weapon to your son that's having mental health issues and has previously made statements about shooting up a school? It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. Colin was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. It just makes me so sad because this case could have been prevented and so many innocent lives were lost. Honestly, I need a hug and I know you guys do, so bring it in. What do you guys think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
There's really a special place in hell for people who not only murder innocent women, also then try and manipulate their family, turn up to the funeral and pretend to cry. This case will give you massive trust issues. It just goes to show you can't even trust those closest to you. Credit to Jackie Flores on Sheep TV, if you know what I mean, because I saw this case on her Sheep TV channel. It was the 27th of April 2025 in Quito in Ecuador. Maria Fernanda Lopez Rodriguez was a stunning model and a really good mum. She had a daughter who absolutely idolized her. She really was just such a lovely, kind, caring woman. She also had a fiance called Jose Duenas. On the day in question, she was active on social media and then just all of a sudden went deadly silent. Her loved ones tried to contact her, but despite the calls going through, they were just ringing out and out. Eventually, her fiance did decide to go over to her apartment and try and knock on the door and see if she would answer, which she sadly didn't. He ended up having to go to the police station, I think with her sister, and they decided to get the police with them to try and forcibly enter the apartment. But inside the apartment, it was not good news. In fact, they walked into a nightmare. Maria was deceased. She was wearing her pajamas and she was face down on her bedroom floor. But because there were no signs of like forced entry or like an obvious motive, like a robbery, the police kind of dismissed this at first as just a natural death, maybe a heart attack. They very quickly said no foul play and just kind of left it. But the family really felt like this was totally wrong. It did not sit right with them. They felt that this no forced entry and wearing the pajamas might have actually meant that she was just with somebody in that apartment that she was really close to. The way that her body was as well when she was found, it just didn't feel like an accident. She had older and newer bruises on her body. Her fiance's story also kept changing, which was super suspicious. He couldn't keep his timeline accurate. He didn't know exactly when he last saw her, and this ranged from like a couple of days to about 15 days. Then all of a sudden he decided to tell police that actually they'd split up, which Maria's daughter actually said was a total lie. The family were also suspicious of him because of his abusive nature. They said that they had reason to believe that he'd been both emotionally and physically abusive to her in the relationship. Family were obviously livid at this kind of like accidental natural death ruling, so they decided to get out there and start protesting. And this seemed to work. On the 7th of May, finally police did announce that they were opening a murder investigation into the death. Chillingly, despite how suspicious he'd been acting, Jose, the fiancé, did turn up at the funeral. And he gave a bouquet of flowers to her mum, and he was asking weird questions to the family like, did they release a cause of death? And one of the weirdest things that he did following his fiance's death was just suddenly delete all evidence of her off his social media, all photos that they'd posted together. The family had to make the devastating decision that after Maria's burial, they would exhume her body and try and get more answers. They ordered a second autopsy, and the results were truly shocking. She was found to have been strangled. This was certainly no accident, and guess whose DNA was under her fingernails? It was her fiance's. The family started receiving scary anonymous messages from a social media account, and they were suspicious that this was the fiance. They were understandably concerned, but fueled by wanting justice for their loved one, they did persist. And Jose was asked about an alibi from police. He lied and said that he'd been at his office on the time in question, which when the police then spoke to the office workers, they realised was a lie. He was actually finally arrested and charged with murder in June. So fingers crossed we are closer to justice.
She took her son's eyes out because he wouldn't close them during a prayer. In May of 2012 in Mexico, Maria del Carmen Rios Garcia had a sign that the world was going to end. So she got her family together to fast and recite a prayer. Maria told her 5-year-old son during the prayer to close his eyes, but he refused. And this prayer was like no other. They were all chanting and dancing in a circle, similar to a ritual, and it was obvious that Fernando was just scared. Maria told Fernando to close his eyes so many times, and since he refused, she got fed up, so she grabbed a spoon and dug out his eyeballs. She decided to do this so she could cleanse them. A teenage boy who was locked in one of the rooms in the house heard Fernando's screams, broke free, and ran outside for help. Officers ended up breaking into the home and were met with a horrific scene. Fernando was immediately rushed to the hospital and luckily survived. He was given glass eyes and is now in care. A neighbor revealed that he thought the family was just deeply religious and didn't know that they were Satanists. Maria and her family members who were all involved were arrested and sentenced to 30 years in prison.
21-year-old Lily James was found brutally murdered in her school's gym bathroom, and the person responsible was one of her scorned male colleagues. Lily was a water polo coach at St. Andrew's Cathedral School in Sydney, Australia. For the past 5 weeks before her death, Lily was dating 24-year-old Paul Thyssen, who was a cricket and hockey coach at the same school. But just days before, Lily had actually broken up with Paul and just wanted to remain friendly with her male colleague. But on October 25th, Lily was reported missing after failing to return home. Just before midnight, police received a phone call from Paul stating that there was a body at the school that should be investigated, and when police arrived, they walked into a gruesome scene. There in the school's gym bathroom was a woman who had been a clear victim of homicide. Police described the woman as having serious head injuries from a hammer that left her to be unrecognizable, so much so that it took them until the next morning to officially identify her as Lily. Authorities began combing through surveillance footage and found that Lily was last seen alive on CCTV footage entering the gym bathroom around 7 p.m. the night she was found. Paul was seen following her close behind and entering the bathroom as well. It's assumed that a fight broke out between the two of them, and then an hour later, Paul was seen leaving the bathroom without Lily. Sometime after the attack, Paul texted Lily's dad from her phone asking to be picked up from the school. He then went to Diamond Bay Reserve, which was his last known location, and dumped a backpack containing some personal belongings and a hammer, which was later determined to be the murder weapon. Around 2 hours later, this is when Paul called 911 to report the body at the school. After this, Paul disappeared, and this is when police publicly identified him as the prime suspect in Lily's death. His body would be found 2 days later on the rocks beneath Diamond Bay Reserve by a group of tradesmen. He was identified via fingerprints, and it was determined that he ended his own life after murdering Lily. There were no reported domestic violence issues between the two of them in the past, but that doesn't really mean anything because, as we all know, we never truly know what happens behind closed doors. Lily was described as the nicest and kindest person who was vibrant, outgoing, and very much loved by her family and friends. I've attached a GoFundMe in my bio created for Lily's family to take the time necessary to grieve this incredible loss. I'd like to end this video on a note from Lily's grandma. She said, quote, "Some people come into this world, I think they are so special, and they don't stay long. I think that was my granddaughter," end quote.
These two foster siblings fell in love, became consumed by drugs, and ultimately decided they would die together on live stream. Victoria Polyvaj was 17 and Vladimir Polyvaj was 18, but their nicknames were Vika and Vova. They grew up in Berezin, Ukraine in a large household of 10 children. Their family lived in poverty, but despite their circumstances, both teenagers had dreams for their futures. Vova was finishing high school, while Vika was saving up her own money because she hoped to attend university. But somewhere along the way, those dreams began to disappear. Vika had been deeply hurt after a relationship with a local boy named Oleg ended badly. Afterwards, she became increasingly isolated and turned to Vova for comfort. Vova already struggled with depression and had suicide attempts in the past. Because they both understood what they were going through, they became extremely close and eventually developed a romantic relationship. Since they were raised as siblings together, their relationship was viewed as taboo. They faced bullying, ridicule, and ostracism, pushing them even further away from their family and community. Then came the drugs. In the months before their deaths, both teenagers began heavily using synthetic drugs. Their mental health deteriorated, their futures seemed to disappear, and the lives they once imagined were replaced by addiction and isolation. By September of 2023, they had decided they weren't coming home. Vova took out a $200,000 Hryvnian loan, roughly $5,000, and the two traveled from Berezin to Kiev. They rented a high-rise apartment and spent their final days buying drugs, food, and everything they wanted before they died. But they didn't disappear quietly. They created a Telegram channel called The Walking Dead and began uploading dozens of videos. They recorded themselves spending time together, changing their appearances, using drugs, and leaving messages for their loved ones. Some of those messages were scheduled to reach their family after they were already gone. Then, on October 2nd, they went live. Their loved ones suddenly realized what was happening and desperately tried to reach them through the live stream. Their sister pleaded with them to stop, but it was already too late. Vika and Vova walked towards the edge of their 24th floor apartment building together. In their final moments, Vova told Vika, "I love you." Then they jumped. The original live stream was eventually removed, but recordings continued circulating online, turning their deaths into a spectacle. There's even some talks about them being a part of some creepypasta lore, which isn't true, when the reality is these were two teenagers struggling with addiction and mental health. I know that mental health topics can be really triggering, so I'm gonna go ahead and give you a hug. Bring it in. With that being said, what do you guys think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Don't ever believe what you see on social media, because this is what their relationship looked like, and he ended up decapitating her. It's honestly such a terrifying world for women. Remind me to stay single forever, please. It was November 2024 in beautiful East Kilbride. In the small village lived 21-year-old Phoenix Spencer Horn. She worked as a waitress at a local hotel and was just a stunning girl with a really youthful spirit. She loved music, in particular the band Fleetwood Mac, their song Dreams. She had met her boyfriend Ewan Methven 2 years prior at a family party, and the pair really hit it off straight away. He worked as a local postman, and the pair ended up living together in a small flat. To anybody who followed the pair on social media, they just looked like the most adorable couple. They were always posting really cute romantic pictures together, cute little selfies, and seemingly having fun. But what happened next was pure evil. Ewan got on well with Phoenix's family, and they really trusted him to look after their daughter. On the 16th of the month, though, he moaned at Phoenix. She was a hard worker, working her waitressing shifts, and he was kind of fixated on himself and how that made him feel. He complained that with her working hard, it left him feeling lonely. On the night in question, at around 9:37 p.m, Phoenix texted her mum to say that the pair were eating tea. Her mum had no reason to think that anything was off, and she'd actually seen Phoenix the day before and she was in good spirits. But at around midnight, a neighbour heard a disturbing loud noise. The neighbour decided to record the noise because it was so strange, and it was obviously so late at night. It was like a loud noise and then shuffled like footsteps. The neighbour had no idea they'd just been an ear witness to the murder. Ewan choked his girlfriend and then attacked her with 3 different knives. She had 20 stab wounds all over her body, on her chest, on her face, just everywhere. Not content with brutally killing her, he actually put her body in the bath and decapitated her and tried to cut off her limbs. If you think that's as bad as it gets, you are wrong. This callous man spent an entire 2 days trying to cover up the murder, using Phoenix's phone and car for his own desires. He scrolled extensively on inappropriate websites, visiting them a total of 170 times. He also tried to buy substances and was just driving around in her car. He also used her phone to text loved ones to keep up a facade that she was still alive and well. Now, he tried to hide her body in the flat, but neighbors started to notice a strange smell. He didn't call 999 straight away. Like I said, it was 2 days later, on the 18th of November, that he finally rang emergency services, but he was very quick to try and think of an excuse. He said he'd had a psychotic episode and he must have been spiked. He also said that he'd blacked out during the entire thing, but obviously the phone records showed otherwise. He was fully able to just be searching on P websites. The delivery driver who'd also delivered food to the pair that evening did say that he seemed absolutely fine when he took the food off him. He didn't seem like he was under the influence or anything. He did ultimately plead guilty and get a life sentence in prison, and Phoenix had a lovely bench installed in her hometown in her honor with her favorite song inscribed.
Now, this is a first for me. A woman decides she doesn't want to go to prison, so she's going to find a victim that she can murder so she can fake her own death. Now, this story is absolutely wild, so stick around because you don't want to miss this. Cleveland, Ohio, April 2001, a woman comes into a KFC and she is just screaming and she is bleeding from her head, saying that someone is trying to murder her. So they call the police arrive, and she points to across the street, saying that a woman and her cousin were trying to murder her. They assaulted her, and they also injected her with insulin. So the woman is 37-year-old Melissa Latham, and as she's talking to the police on what had happened, another woman comes in and is just screaming at Melissa, saying, "She tried to steal $1,000 from me." So Melissa is jumping over the counter to try to get away from this woman. And this woman is Tanika Jenkins. And she says Melissa tried to steal $1,000 from her, but she never assaulted her. A little background on Melissa. She is from Cleveland, and she's described as being bubbly and outgoing. And she had a pretty good childhood, but eventually her mother started using. And then Melissa got pregnant when she was 13 years old. And then a few years later, she had her second child. But then Melissa started using, but she was kind of functional when she was under the influence. But then she had 7 children in total, and to support her habit, she started doing petty theft. So she was in and out of jail constantly, and then they said she was unfit to be a mother, so her kids had to go into foster care. The family eventually moved to Oakwood, and Melissa was able to get a job at McDonald's, but she was still using. So is it possible this was a deal gone bad? So when Melissa was being put into the ambulance, she pointed across the street and says that's where she was attacked. Tanika's story is that Melissa was using with her cousin Kyle Martin, and the attack did not happen at her house. It was at the abandoned house next door. But she allowed the police to search her home, but she was a little hesitant at first. But the police immediately go down to the basement because that's where Melissa said the attack had occurred. And they get this overwhelming smell of bleach. And Tanika's mom is actually cleaning up something down there. Now, she says she was picking up after the dogs, but the police see a lot of blood spatter all around the basement. So Tanika was put in handcuffs, and then they found Kyle, and he was also put in handcuffs. And he said, "Let Tanika go, this was all me." He was all sweaty and he had scratches on him. So they take him down to the police station for a formal interview, and they decide to trick him. They're going to say that Melissa had passed away, and eventually he caves in and finally decides to tell what had happened. So Tanika was asking Kyle if he knew any females that wanted to make some money by committing insurance fraud. So they're out looking for a volunteer, and that's when they find Melissa. Melissa needs to make money, so she gets in the vehicle with them. They all go buy some Coke. They go back to the house and smoke it. Then the next morning, Melissa and Tanika go to the dentist office where Melissa is going to get dental x-rays. Then after the appointment, they go buy some more Coke, and then they go back to the house and smoke. Now the next morning, Kyle woke up and he's still kind of under the influence, and he's a little bit paranoid and annoyed that Melissa is still there. So Melissa was in the bathroom and Kyle notices that some crack and also $800 was missing. So as soon as Melissa came out, he struck her in the head. And then Tanika comes down and says, "What's the problem?" And then Kyle says, "She's your problem." Then Tanika grabs a brick and then hits her in the head multiple times and then injects her with insulin 4 times. Then she takes all of the weapons and evidence and throws it over the fence between her house and that abandoned house. Now they want to talk to Melissa, but she's still out of it. She had to have 6 stitches in the front of her head and 25 to 30 staples in the back of her head, and her blood sugar was extremely low. But her injuries were consistent with Kyle's story. But thankfully, Melissa eventually regained consciousness and she was able to identify Tanika and Kyle as her attackers. Melissa explains she went with Tanika to the dentist office and they were going to put a different name on Melissa's paperwork. But Melissa had no idea that Tanika was going to use her own name. You can kind of see where we're going with this. So after the appointment, they went back to the house, and as soon as Melissa got out of the bathroom, they just started attacking her. And she's like, "What did I do? What did I do?" And Tanika is hitting her in the head with a brick at least 4 times. She's like, "I've got to play dead." And then she injected her 4 times with insulin. She's like, "I just want to knock her out. Hurry, help me, get my ankle monitor off my ankle and we'll put it on her. Then we'll take her to the abandoned house and burn her and I can fake my death and then they can compare her dental records to the dental x-rays that they just took." Now thankfully, Melissa played dead and Tanika and Kyle went upstairs to find something to wrap her body in. So Melissa was able to get up and escape from the house and run all the way across the street to the KFC to get help. Now, Tanika had a full ride to college plus an extra $16,000 grant, and then she applied to graduate school at Yale for neuroscience. And the administration was wondering, her classwork is not leveling up with her transcript. So they called the administration at the community college asking, how can we help her, get her on the right track? And they said they have no record of Tanika at the community college. So that's why Tanika is on an ankle monitor, because she committed fraud and she failed up to show for her sentencing. So when they eventually found her, she claimed why she didn't show up for court is because she was kidnapped, SA'd, put in the trunk of a vehicle, and they took her all the way to Pennsylvania. But she was able to somehow get out of the trunk and drive herself back all the way to Ohio. And they even sent a picture of her in the trunk of the vehicle. Now her lawyer is thinking, this is not going to be a plausible story, but they were able to strike a deal with the prosecution. As long as she pays Yale back for the money she took from them, they will just give her 3 years probation. They also will put her in a rehabilitation program, and if she completes it and gets in no trouble, they will dismiss the case. But that did not happen. She was arrested again in Florida for trafficking narcotics with her mother. So Tanika and her mother are going to meet this dealer at a warehouse, but it's really an undercover agent. So they've got this loads of cash that they're going to give to this undercover agent for all of this coke. So they get the money out. The undercover agent brings the coke to Tanika and her mother actually tastes it. But eventually the other undercover agents come in and arrest them. So Tanika and her mom were able to get out on bond, but she had to wear an ankle monitor. And this is why Tanika wanted to fake her death, because she was facing a minimum of 10 years to life in prison. And because she did not want to go to prison, she was willing to murder an innocent woman to fake her death. For the trafficking charge in Florida, Tanika was sentenced to 24 years in prison and her mother was sentenced to 15 years. So Tanika, her mother, and also Kyle were all charged with the attempted murder of Melissa. So Tanika, she got 20 years in prison. Her mother, I believe, only got obstruction, so she only got sentenced to 1 year. And then Kyle served 10 years. Now, I believe Kyle and also Tanika's mother have already served their prison time, but Tanika will be up for parole in the year 2039. And I believe to this day, Melissa is doing very well. She is recovering and is trying to have a relationship with her children. But this story is absolutely wild. Now, when I first heard this, I was thinking, how are they committing insurance fraud? How is this working? But then it all makes sense. She was going to use Melissa, pretend it's Tanika's dental records when it's really Melissa's. So if Melissa had passed away, they would have Melissa's dental records on file under Tanika's name. So it would make it look like that she had died and she would never have to go to prison. But I'm so thankful that Melissa was very smart to play dead, because otherwise she probably would have lost her life. But she was very smart thinking, decided to play dead so she was able to escape and able to get justice for her. But this story was absolutely wild. I've never heard, this is the first time I've heard of a case like this, but let me know what you guys thought of this story in the comments. Thanks for watching. I love you all. We'll see you in the next one, and please take care of yourselves.
I was gonna wait to film this tomorrow. I probably should have, now that I'm actually looking at this lighting, because this lighting is horrible, but we're all friends here, right? And I'm really in the mood to chat. I really want to talk to you guys in the comments, so I'm literally filming this tonight. I'm gonna edit and post it. This is another one where this is what keeps me up at night. People just don't disappear without anyone knowing anything or saying anything, without no answers. It is unfathomable. Is that the word? Unfathomable for me to believe that someone went missing and nobody knows what happened. Caitlin Atkins was only 19 years old when she went missing, and the events leading up to her disappearance are so weird. Caitlin was a 19-year-old girl from Virginia. She's been described as thoughtful, compassionate, friendly, and smart. She had a very close relationship to her mother Lisa and her sister Gabby. They spoke all the time, daily, always updated on each other's lives, in constant contact. Caitlin moved from Virginia to Arizona after high school to be with her fiance Amber. The girls knew each other when they were little. Actually, they were friends in primary school, and they just stayed in touch until eventually they both graduated high school and their friendship turned into a relationship. Caitlin and her sister Gabby spoke all the time about their future, how excited they were for it. They talked about their future kids, future families, their dream house, dream weddings, everything that they were looking forward to in the future. So when Gabby fell pregnant, they were over the moon, and Caitlin could not wait to meet her nephew. Caitlin's nephew was born on November 21st of 2015 after Caitlin booked a flight back to Virginia on December 1st with plans to meet the baby, hang out with her sister, catch up with her mom. She was also really excited to let them know that she decided to go to cosmetology school, which made so much sense for Caitlin because she had always loved anything that had to do with hair colors, hairstyles, whatever you name it. It was also convenient timing that she was going home because she needed to grab her diploma in order to finish the enrollment process for the school, and classes were going to start as soon as she got back to Arizona. She landed in Virginia on the 1st. Her mom picked her up and they drove straight to Gabby's. She had a great trip and was due to fly back to Arizona at 5:40 on the 5th, which was a Saturday, which again was perfect, so she'd have a couple days before classes started that upcoming Monday. Her mom and her sister were both busy, so her ex-stepdad, a man named James Branton, agreed to give Caitlin a ride to the airport. Cool. That was the plan. Her mom dropped her off at James's place in the morning. Caitlin and James hung out. They chatted. They were catching up. Caitlin told him about how excited she was to get started in cosmetology school, and around 1 p.m. they got ready to leave for the airport because James had to go to work at 3 p.m. But 19-year-old Caitlin Akins would never make it to the airport. In fact, she would never be seen again. At 11:56 that morning, Caitlin texted her fiance Amber to let her know that she would not be coming home that night because she wouldn't be able to catch her flight. And then she said she wouldn't be able to text for a while, but at 1:52 p.m. James texted Caitlin's mom Lisa to confirm that he had just dropped off Caitlin at the airport. 8 minutes later, Caitlin texted her mom to let her know that she was at the airport, but she said her phone was dying, so she wouldn't be able to text for a while. A little bit later, Caitlin texted her fiance Amber again and says that there was a problem with the flight and she was going to have to figure out a connection, which is odd, right? Because the last that Amber heard, Caitlin wasn't making her flight, so she was confused. Because she was confused, she decided to call Lisa and was like, do you know what's going on with the flight? Did she make the flight? Is she on a different flight? What's going on? And Lisa didn't really know. She had not heard from Caitlin in a little while either, and when she tried to call her to see what was going on, she couldn't get a hold of her. Her mom texted her, called her, even requested the airport staff to announce her name over the speaker, but nobody could find Caitlin. Everyone was confused, so Lisa called James and was like, what's going on? And James responds by telling her that he did drop Caitlin off, but he didn't drop her off at the airport. He actually dropped her off at a mall that was over 10 miles away. Springfield Mall. Apparently, Caitlin told James that she would be fine to take the metro from the mall to the airport, but that only confused Lisa more because she knew that her daughter, 1, hated taking the metro and would never offer to do so, and 2, had never been to that mall before, so it would be weird for her to go out of her way to go to this mall that she's never been to before for seemingly no reason at all. A few hours pass, and Lisa receives another text from Caitlin saying, quote, I'm staying with a friend. I need some time alone. Again, weird. I mean, just imagine your sister or your daughter visits you. You have a great time together. She tells you about how excited she is to get back home to her fiance. You think that she's being dropped off at the airport, but then you hear conflicting stories on if she was or wasn't dropped off at the airport. And the next thing you know, she's texting you saying, I need some time alone. I would be like, what are you talking about? Another weird thing was the way that Caitlyn was texting. It wasn't her usual texting style. I don't know about you guys. I would definitely notice if someone close to me was texting a different way. It just didn't sound like her. It wasn't the way that she would usually text. Then Amber gets a message from Caitlyn on Facebook saying, I can't come back. I cheated on you. Again, so strange for so many reasons. The biggest reasons being Caitlyn wasn't the type to be unfaithful. She was very happy in her relationship. She was very excited for her future, and she couldn't wait to get back home to start cosmetology school. She had so many things that she was looking forward to. Both Lisa and Amber kept trying to get a hold of Caitlyn, but they couldn't. And without knowing what else to do, Lisa went to the police station to report Caitlyn missing. However, at first, they didn't take her seriously. Officers said that Caitlyn was a 19-year-old girl. She was an adult, and suggested that maybe she did just leave on her own accord and she did need some time away. But 2 days passed, and by Monday, they still hadn't heard anything from Caitlyn. So Lisa made her way back to the police station to officially report her daughter missing. While she was there, an officer received a call to report a suitcase that was found in a ditch. That suitcase was Caitlyn's suitcase. It was found around 50 miles away from Springfield Mall. It had scuff marks all around it, and a wheel was missing. Inside were Caitlyn's credit cards, her ID, her wallet, and her plane ticket. What they didn't find were her clothing or her diploma. Again, red flags, big question marks. Not long after that, another group of officers found the deceased body of a young woman a few miles away, which was horrible for Caitlyn's loved ones because she was missing. There were no signs of her. Her suitcase was just found stranded, and now they found a body. The body matched Caitlyn's description. It looked to be someone her age with her hair color, similar build, etc. However, after they recovered the body and conducted an autopsy, it was confirmed that it was not Caitlyn. Police's next move was to begin search efforts. They set a 30-mile radius around where the suitcase was found to search for clues. There were helicopters, people on foot, authorities, some volunteers in the search party, a lot of people looking for Caitlyn, but they found nothing. Next, the police decided to check CCTV footage from the airport, the mall, and the metro station, expecting to see Caitlyn and or James and be able to trace their last steps. But there was no sign at all of Caitlyn, James, or James's car. Next, they looked at phone records that showed some holes in James's story. Around 2 p.m., when Caitlyn texted her mom that she was at the airport, the phone connected to a tower 30 miles away from the airport, closer to James's house. When James texted Lisa that he had dropped off Caitlyn at the airport, his phone also pinged closer to his house, but not at the same place as Caitlyn's phone. Caitlyn's last text to her mom was sent from a completely different area, around 15 miles away from where her suitcase was found. What does that tell us? That Caitlyn was never at the mall, never made it to the airport, and that James had lied. Also important to note that James's employer said that he never made it to work that day. So James, who was at the start a very cooperative, concerned ex-stepdad, was now a liar, still the last person to see Caitlyn, and suddenly extremely uncooperative. Did I say that word right? When cracks started to show in his story, he shut down and he refused to talk to police officers any longer. Authorities got a search warrant to search his house and his car, and they did search for 8 hours, but they found nothing. As far as his phone, well, he had used some encrypted software on his phone, meaning the police couldn't analyze it, they couldn't search it. Police spoke to one of Caitlyn's closest friends named Kevin, who gave some information. First of all, he said that the night prior to Caitlyn disappearing, she was at a friend's house and she got intimate, if you know what I'm saying, physically intimate with 2 other people. So she had cheated on her fiance and she regretted it badly. And also she told Kevin that she felt really uncomfortable because she said the 2 others basically just forced themselves onto her. Kevin also told authorities that James was not a very nice person to Caitlyn, that he was verbally abusive and their relationship wasn't that great. All things that I think are important to know, but even with that, it led to nothing and there are still no answers. There has been no movement on the case. The most common theory that I read was that Caitlyn did leave on her own accord. People thought that she only took her diploma and her clothing to start over somewhere new. Now, there are different opinions on why she would have left. Some believe that she was unhappy with her life and she wanted a change. Others thought that she left because she did feel guilty for cheating on her fiance. Some even guessed that maybe she met someone and decided to leave everything behind and start a new life with them. But Caitlyn's family still does not believe that she would do that. She was very close to her mother, very close to her sister who just had a baby. Her family thinks that something bad happened to her. To this day, she has not been found. Her family wants everyone someone to keep talking about her, keep sharing her story so she's not forgotten about. And her family continues to miss her every single day and search for her, and I just cannot believe that there's nothing. Let me know if you guys have heard of this case. I think it's so important to talk about the cases that don't have answers, so that maybe, I don't know, maybe you've seen something, you think that you know someone who knows something. I don't know. I just find it unbelievable that there's just a big question mark left in the end. Sorry about the bad quality in this video. I probably should have waited to film this tomorrow, but I hope you guys had the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
A man was found deceased in his bed, and they're trying to determine if he took his own life or if it was in fact murder. And it would take the help from an expert in forensic linguistics to find out what really happened to him. 1992, Raleigh, North Carolina, a man had called and stated that he found his roommate, 23-year-old Michael Hunter, unconscious in his bed. He tried to wake him up and he was not responding. So the paramedics arrive and they find that Michael is in fact deceased. There was no obvious signs of trauma, so an autopsy would confirm on what happened to him. So they did an autopsy on Michael and did a tox screen, and they found 2 different cold medicines in his system, diphenhydramine and also hydroxyzine. They also found a lethal dose of lidocaine in his system as well. Now, the paramedics said that they never injected Michael with lidocaine to try to resuscitate him because he was already gone. Now, the passing of Michael was very hard on his father, Jim. He believed that someone had murdered his son, Michael, and there was nothing he could do about it. And he went into such a deep depression that he ended up taking his own life. So not only did Michael's mother lose her son, she also lost her husband. I cannot imagine what she is going through. So Michael was keeping a secret from his family. They had no idea that he was a homosexual, and he had 2 roommates. One was Gary Wilson, he is a landscaper, and also Joseph Menino. He is a medical student and is about to graduate and go into residency. And they all 3 considered to be life partners, and they were all going to be faithful to each other. Now, Michael was not getting along with Joseph, but Gary had no problems with either Joseph or Michael. But Michael and Gary decided that Joseph had to go. So they all 3 used to sleep in the same bed. So now Joseph had to sleep on the couch until he could find a different place to live. So Joseph was questioned, and the night of Michael's passing, Michael was having a severe migraine, and Joseph wanted to help him with the pain and to help him sleep. So he does admit to injecting him with an antihistamine, but not any lidocaine. Now, this is against medical ethics and also against the law. Joseph is only a medical student, and he cannot administer medication without a licensed doctor present. In Michael's belongings, they found a computer disk, and on this disk, they found a typed letter where Michael is explaining that he believes he is HIV positive and he's planning on ending his own life. Now, did Michael really write this letter, or did someone else write it? So this is when the expert in forensic linguistics comes in. So she has examples of Michael's handwriting and then also the typed letter on that computer disk. Now, the typed letter on the computer disk, this person is using a lot of conjunction words, using the words and but they're not using it to combine phrases, but in large sentences. She also confirmed that this person was using a lot of combining adverbs, and Michael did not have this in his writing samples. So she can absolutely confirm that Michael did not write this note. So then she compared it to Joe's writing samples, and he uses a lot more complicated adverbs than simple ones. And she really believes that Joe is the one that had typed this letter to make it look like that Michael had taken his own life. Now, if he would have done that, if he used a syringe, they would have found a syringe in the home, but there was none to be found. Also, Michael was not HIV positive. So they confront Joe with this evidence, and he does admit to typing that letter. He does say that Michael did have a migraine the night prior, and he did give him an injection of lidocaine, but accidentally gave him too much and accidentally caused him to overdose. So Joe was charged with first-degree murder, but he is claiming that Michael asked for this injection because he does in fact have migraines, and it was an accidental overdose. Now, I might believe that if he wouldn't have tried to make this fake note looking like that Michael had taken his own life. Now, because the jury wasn't for certain if Michael consented for Joseph to give him that injection of lidocaine, they only found him guilty of involuntary manslaughter, and he was only sentenced to 7 years in prison. But according to Michael's friends, he would have never consented to Joseph to give him that lidocaine injection. And now Joseph will never be able to practice medicine ever again. He knew exactly what he was doing. There's no way you accidentally overdosed Michael on lidocaine. You knew how much was lethal. You intentionally did this to him because you were so upset that Gary and Michael kicked you out of the three-way relationship. This is why I don't understand how some people can be with more than one person. You know, there's a lot of jealousy in these relationships. There can be tension. People don't get along with one another. I just stick with one person and that's all I need. I don't know how some people can do that. There's just not for me, but that's exactly what happened in this case. Joseph was upset. He was getting kicked out of the relationship because they were all supposed to be life partners and be together for the rest of their lives. But that wasn't going to happen because Michael and Joseph couldn't get along. So Joseph decided to murder him. But unfortunately, the jury didn't see it that way. They couldn't prove that Michael didn't consent to that injection. So unfortunately, he's out on the streets today. But thankfully, he will never be anyone's doctor. But let me know what you guys thought of this story in the comments. Thanks for watching. I love you all. We'll see you in the next one. And please take care of yourselves.